So you did the smart thing. You've architected your system for resilience, and you probably went multi-cloud. It's the go-to play, right? To protect yourself from some catastrophic outage. But what if I told you that entire strategy has a hidden flaw? A myth, really, that could leave you just as vulnerable as you were before. Well, that's exactly what we're going to dig into today. Just let that sink in for a second. You've put in all the work. You've meticulously set up your workloads across AWS and Azure, maybe GCP too. You've got your failover plans, redundancy, the whole shebang. But what if the real threat, the one thing that can bring the entire house of cards down, is some quiet little dependency you barely even think about?
And look, let's be super clear, going multi-cloud is a smart move. There's a reason we call it the gold standard. The promise is huge, right? Protection from any single cloud provider having a bad day, avoiding that dreaded vendor lock-in, and chasing that dream of near-perfect uptime. On paper, it looks like the ultimate safety net.
But here's where we see that gap between the promise and, well, the hidden reality. We're aiming for 100% uptime, but the truth is we're leaning on shared dependencies. We're sold on total resilience, but what we're actually creating is systemic risk. We think we're avoiding vendor lock-in, but we often just create a brand new and frankly more dangerous choke point.
I love this analogy because it just cuts right to the heart of the problem. Imagine you own two beautiful, secure houses in completely different cities. You did this so you'd always have a safe place to be. Seems foolproof, yeah? But what happens if the one company in the world that can make the keys for both of those houses suddenly goes out of business? You're locked out. Everywhere. All your careful planning is suddenly for nothing.
And that brings us to the real villain of our story, the single point of failure. So let's pull back the curtain on this idea and really understand the kind of systemic risk it sneaks into even our best laid plans. Now, systemic risk might sound like some fancy business school term, but it's actually pretty simple. It's not about one little piece of your app breaking. No, it's about a chain reaction. It's the domino effect. It's when one seemingly minor external service fails and it just topples your entire beautifully designed multi-cloud architecture.
So, what are these critical dependencies? Well, a lot of the time, they're the essential software as a service, or SaaS providers we all use. Think about it. Your DNS provider? That's the internet's phone book. If it goes down, nobody can find you. Your authentication service? That's the bouncer at the front door. If it fails, nobody can log in. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They are the absolute pillars your service is built on.
And this right here, this is the picture of that choke point we were just talking about. You've got these massive, powerful, totally independent cloud infrastructures, but you've funneled everything, all your user access, all your traffic, something absolutely mission-critical through one single external provider. It's like having two giant front doors that both lead into one very, very narrow hallway.
All right, so abstract risk is one thing, but let's make this feel real. Let's walk through a little story. A hypothetical, but trust me, an entirely plausible scenario of how a perfectly designed multi-cloud system can come to a screeching, grinding halt.
It all starts on a totally normal morning. 8 a.m., all systems are green, everything's humming along. But then, at 9:15, the first alert pops up. Your third-party auth provider is reporting an issue. At first, you might think, okay, that's an external problem, we can handle it. But by 9:45, the horror starts to dawn. No one can log in. It doesn't matter if your service is hosted on AWS or GCP, it's affecting everyone. By 11 a.m., let's face it, for all practical purposes, you're completely and totally down.
This is the kind of sentence you never ever want to write in a post-mortem report after losing who knows how much money. We were multi-cloud, but we weren't multi-auth. The team did everything right by the cloud playbook, but they completely missed the one dependency that mattered most. They had a single point of failure for the most basic thing, identity.
Okay, enough of the doom and gloom. We've identified the problem, we've seen just how bad it can be. So now, let's talk about solutions. How do we actually build real resilience that accounts for these sneaky external risks? Turns out there are two main strategies you can use.
On one hand, you have diversification. The whole goal here is to just eliminate that single point of failure completely. On the other hand, you have graceful degradation. Now, this strategy kind of accepts that a failure might happen, and it's all about designing your system to survive that failure, with its core functionality still running. And here's the thing, they're not mutually exclusive. The really robust architectures, they often use a mix of both. So let's talk about diversification first. Step one is so simple, but it's absolutely crucial. You have to audit your systems and actually identify these single points of failure.
Step 2, you go out and onboard a second, totally independent provider for that service. And step 3, and please do not skip this part, you have to automate the failover, because when a real outage hits, believe me, you are not going to have time to be flipping switches manually.
Now, graceful degradation, that takes a totally different mindset. You have to start asking questions like, okay, if our payment gateway goes down, can users still at least browse our catalog and add things to a wish list? It's all about mapping those user journeys, designing your system to be smart enough to switch off the non-essential features, and, this is a big one, communicating clearly with your users about what's going on.
So now it's time to turn the spotlight inward. We've gone through the theory, we've told the scary story, and we've looked at the solutions. The real question now is, how does all of this apply to your architecture? What's your weakest link? What's that one dependency that, if you're being honest, kind of keeps you up at night?
So let's just boil this all down. Here are the key things to walk away with. First, just being multi-cloud doesn't automatically make you resilient, not by a long shot. Second, you have to look beyond your own clouds to those hidden third-party services that create systemic risk. Third, you have to actively hunt for these dependencies before an outage forces you to. And finally, remember that true resilience comes from smart strategies like diversification and graceful degradation.
And I'll leave you with this one final thought. Take a moment, and I mean really seriously consider this question. If your most critical SaaS provider, your auth, your DNS, whatever it is, had a total outage right this second, what would happen to you? Do you actually know the answer? If that answer is total failure, well, then you know exactly where you need to start building real resilience. Thanks for tuning in.